All right, Steph, if you haven't already, please let folks in from the waiting room. All right, Michael, we are live and you may begin whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Welcome to tonight's full design review board meeting. October 15th, 2024. I have a quorum of 7 out of 9 members. Is that right, Steph? I didn't see Camelia and
You have 8.
8. Who am I missing?
Camelia.
Is Camelia on now?
No, Camelia is.
Oh, no, there's Emily. There's Emily. Okay, I see Emily now. Yep. Okay. So we have 8 members out of 9. We're good to get started. I am looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Motion passes. Do we have any meeting minutes to approve, Steph?
Yes, we have September 17th, September 24th, October 1st, and October 8th.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve September 17th, September 24th, October 1st, and October 8th?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes 8-0. 1 absentee. All right, so now I'm looking for any general member comments that are not in pertaining to application tonight. We have anybody who would like to speak on that? I don't see anybody. All right, so then we can get into tonight's agenda. So first up, we have an appeal for item F. 2270 Cedar Cove Court. Is the appellant here?
Hi, am I allowed to share a screen?
Unfortunately, I don't believe so. Staff has your appeal though up. And so correct me, you are the homeowner as well, that you're appealing the decision, correct?
I'm the
Affected party.
complaint the guy that filed the complaint.
Oh, okay. Why is
No, he's the homeowner. He's the homeowner of 2206 Southgate Square. He's the one who's filed the appeal.
I'm the homeowner of 2256 Cedar Cove Court.
I'm sorry,
Correct.
I have my
So we're on the wrong one.
my alphabet. I'm looking at my agenda. I had application F. I
But
apologize.
that was my name in this form. This is my name, Wissam Yafi.
No, it's on me. Isn't FG, shouldn't we be looking at Cedar Cove Court first, Steph?
That is
Correct.
correct.
That's what we have up.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought I heard Southgate Square. Okay. All right, so go ahead and so for an appeal, you need to prove that we had a misapplied guideline or a misapplied cluster standard when we made a decision. So
Correct. Would you like me to start?
Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
And I can't share bullets or a picture, right?
That is correct. Everything that you have presented to staff, we've presented to the board for review. Nothing at this point could be shared on the screen.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, there's a couple of new findings. So first of all, there are no guidelines in Cedar Cove for hot tubs, and the president advised me this by email. Basically, we contacted Fairfax County, and they advised us that basically the ordinance there's 3 ordinances or sections that need to be looked at. 69.1-4-8 decks, 69.1-4-11 fencing and barriers, and 69.1-2-24 fencing and barriers. So basically, the neighbor essentially, the deck does not extend at least 50% around the spa pool. The spa is not sitting on a continuous deck. There's stairs around it. The deck is wood. It's sitting on a concrete slab or what looks like it, which is 2 feet lower than the deck. So it does not have any fencing around it whatsoever, and it's sitting towards the end of the lot. So that's one finding. The second new finding is in the previous case or in the previous hearing, one of the, I think the landscaper said there are other tubs in the neighborhood. There are 2272 and 2264 Cedar Cove. 2272 has fencing around, and the tub is sitting on a flat deck that surrounds it, and it's in the back of it's closer to the house, not the front. 2264 has fencing around it, and it's also sitting on a deck, so it is fully fenced. You can't see it from the outside. 2272, these are the only two. The 2272 it's sitting towards the back, so you can't see it either. 2270, which is what we're complaining about, has it just basically, open. So during your inspection, you guys advised us, that was back in July, that it doesn't meet guidelines. And somehow in the previous, it was found that all of a sudden it does meet guidelines. So those are the two new findings. There is a clarification that we would like, which is if the trees that have been planted by that neighbor are or are not on cluster property. There's a red flag now that has been placed there. We don't know who placed it. So we're just walking around it from the part of the neighborhood, or at least the cluster property. But we want clarification because it seems to us that there's like 3 feet away from the property line that have been taken up by trees that are trying to somehow cover up for the tub, but the tub is so on its own that you could still see the whole thing and it has no fencing around it. So these are the new findings. The most key element of this is the Fairfax County ordinance and where the tub is placed, unlike anything that we have within our cluster. The two issues we'd like clarification on from Reston is, first, if this is meeting county guidelines, because there doesn't seem to be any cluster guidelines, and we didn't see any specific thing within. We read also the guidelines of Reston Association. We didn't see anything there that said somebody could put a tub out there, because for all we know, somebody could put a bathroom out there. We don't want, we don't mind having tubs towards the houses, fenced in, that don't disrupt the environmental view of everything. This one, in our mind, and we have pictures for it, is really out there. And if everybody starts doing this, it's going to ruin the entire bulkhead view from the lake towards our neighborhood. So we are concerned about this. And the other is about the encroachment, which you guys sent us a letter on July, I think Sandra Colina, on July 16th, saying that there was an encroachment. But again, in the hearing that we had a few weeks ago, somebody said, well, they're allowed to build trees around it because eventually these trees are going to grow and then it's going to cover the tub. So it seems to me that an error is being covered by another error, and the whole thing doesn't make sense. I'll pause here and answer any questions that the community might have.
All right, awesome. Thank you, sir. One question I have for staff, he's saying that our approval does state cluster standards for hot tubs. Do we have record of said standards on file?
There is no.
Go ahead, Ken.
There is no established cluster standard for this cluster as it relates to hot tubs. That's general stapled language that we include in decision letters, especially when there's a cluster involved.
Okay.
So the design guidelines take precedent over priority over review of the application.
Okay. And then who was on the panel who reviewed this?
So that'll be Michael Bianchino and Sarah Clark.
Yep.
Okay. All right, sir. I'm going to go around and see if anyone has any questions for you, and then we will discuss.
Happy to share pictures or displays if you guys would like, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think we have some pictures from the application. And so let me go around and see if people have questions, and then we'll come back to you, okay?
Sure.
So John, do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, not at
Elena,
this-
do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, thank you.
Samantha, do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, I do not.
Brian, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Emily, do you have any questions?
No questions for the appellant.
So my question, and I'm cheating because mine isn't for the appellant, but mine is for Sarah and Mike. Did you guys think there was a guideline, or that you guys didn't approve it based on a guideline? I know Sam was or Cam was saying that was boilerplate language, but I just want to make sure that you guys did not think there was a guideline for hot tubs.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
And then did you guys think this was an existing hot tub that they were just replacing? Because that's how the wording of the letter made it sound like it was existing and you guys were just approving an existing that was already an approved hot tub just with a new model, basically. That's how I read it. But is that how you guys understood it, or do you guys understand that it was a new hot tub?
I mean, it was in existence at the time, right, Sarah?
Yes, that they had built it, and now they're coming in for a later approval of it.
Correct.
But this was new, and you could see that they had pictures of that they had poured the slab for the tub. And Mike, my understanding when we reviewed this is that we were referring, when it came to the hot tub standards, to the Reston Association, the RA standards.
That would be correct.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously we know, you know, I appreciate the appellant's points with regard to county standards being what they are, but that is not the purview of this body. So back to you there, Mr. Wood.
Well, and the reason why I was asking it is because the way I read the letter, and if we pull up the letter, staff, to me, and this is what's tricky when somebody's already done the work before getting approval, is I think in our wording, we can't say that we're approving an existing hot tub, because that's what it says. And to me, this was not an existing hot tub. This was a new, it was a new hot tub.
Correct.
And so that's, so it could just be a wording thing, but I want to make sure that we're there. So let me go back around the room. See if anybody...
I mean, to your point, Mr. Wood, I mean, it was in existence at the time it was reviewed by this body. If that's, I mean, I get your point about the...
Correct. I guess I just want to make sure that, like, for an example, Mike, let's say somebody went and just built a deck, and then we went and said, we approve the existing deck. We should, the wording of the letter should say, we approve the new construction deck, not an existing deck, is my...
To that, absolutely. My point was more just in terms of timeline of events for what we saw, just so that it's clear.
Yeah. So just for future, I think that should be, and sir, just to clarify, you're only appealing the hot tub decision, correct? The rest of the deck replacements and stuff that...
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, even the neighbor, the one facing this neighbor built out a deck. We don't have a problem with them building out a deck, but they fenced it properly and they put the tub to the back, which kind of kept, if you're looking from the lake towards our neighborhood, it didn't change the view because it looks like wood and it kind of fits in. In this case, they just put the tub out there, and when we saw it, we kind of first we walked around it, you know, because that's how we always used to walk. They threatened us with calling the police for some reason, but then we're like, well, do they even have the right to put a tub all the way out there without it really being with, you know, with the guidelines? Now, I got Mr. Bianchino's, you know, kind of statement that this is Reston and not Fairfax, but surely Reston cannot go against Fairfax ordinance in approving a design. So Cedar doesn't have any. So of course we fell back on Reston. If Reston doesn't have any, it's got to fall back on Fairfax. And so it can't get lost in the shuffle.
Okay. So yeah, so I'll just touch on that a little bit. So we can give design aesthetic approval, but the applicant still needs to go get all proper required permits from the county. So that would be something that we don't enforce what the county issues them, or making sure that they get them. But by code, they have, in our letter, we make sure that we put a note that says they still have to go get all Fairfax County approvals from a building code standpoint or electrical code standpoint in this instance, as an example, right? And it would be zoning code also, you know, with your concern of the property line, et cetera. So that would be something that you would need to follow up with Fairfax County on. We as a board would look at just the aesthetics of it and making sure that it fits in with our
Sure.
spot hot tub guideline for clusters. And so that's where I wanted to kind of lead this. And in my opinion, you know, I think that the tub location is against our standard for a location. To me, it does not meet what our guideline says, which, you know, it should be located as to minimize the impact of its use on the neighboring properties. And to me, there's a pretty clear spot they could locate this thing back under the deck, and not out where it currently is, and still in meeting our guideline.
And
That's
that's
my
what the other
opinion.
neighbors did. The other neighbors did exactly what you're saying.
Correct.
And we
So
don't have a problem
hold on,
with
sir.
it.
Let me just go around with the board members and we're in our kind of discussion moment. And Cam has a question, comment.
More of a comment, and we can talk about it afterwards, but technically this is the decision letter would always be for an existing element. The homeowner who you're speaking with filed a complaint to Reston Association. And in that process, Reston Association found a violation for an unapproved hot tub. So our method of tracking existing versus new elements is to consider anything that is existing as existing in the decision so that we can track from a post-design review inspection process anything that may or may not get approved by the DRB in that method. So I just want to make sure that the DRB is aware all elements that are existing at the time that it's reviewed will be considered existing elements. In addition, this came as a complaint, and so the modification was deemed unapproved originally by staff as a result of the complaint inspection.
Okay. John, do you have any thoughts on the appellant's, I guess, appeal?
Not right now.
Okay. Elena?
No, thank you.
Samantha?
No, thank you.
Brian?
I think it's possible that a guideline was misapplied here. Just in terms of locating the hot tub to minimize the impacts. So I have questions for the homeowner if it gets there, about, you know, how the plan was carried out and things like that. So I think it's possible that there's a misapplied guideline here.
Emily?
Hi, Michael. Yes, I would like to speak. As the LA on this particular project, I can speak to a couple of things. One, that the location of the hot tub is actually set back from the left side of the applicant's property if we're looking at the plan view. And where you can see those skip laurels that are planted along there are going to form a solid green row hedge once they are fully grown in. So the idea there was to help screen the hot tub from both the pathway, because if it was tucked in, what the plan doesn't show is that if the hot tub was tucked up closer to the house, and it would actually be closer to their neighboring property, and the next door neighbor who did sign off on this application, by the way, and had no problem with it. So they set the hot tub back in off the left side of the property in order to give themselves privacy. And then we set in an evergreen buffer in order to give them a little bit more privacy and make sure that this was going to be screened from the cluster. I'd also like to note about Fairfax County that all of the permits have been approved. This is a lockable hot tub. There doesn't need to be any kind of railing or border around it. The other deck across the street has a railing because the deck needs a railing. It has nothing to do with the hot tub or its location, which is also just out in complete plain view, sitting out in the neighborhood, and no one minds. Everyone on this row of the houses, all of the waterfront likes the applicant or the original applicant's hot tub and has no problem with it. The affected party is from a neighbor who is several houses not even connected up the street, and is mainly raising this because of because this abuts cluster property. And we had the president of the cluster here during the last meeting. There were no issues from anybody else in the cluster, and there's 66 houses in the neighborhood. No one else from the cluster has raised an issue aside from this one affected party. So it's really coming down to where the hot tub is sited is not affecting the neighboring properties or the cluster. It's affecting this one homeowner who doesn't like that there's a hot tub now on the pathway down to where their boat is stored, and it's making it slightly less convenient for them to get to their hot tub area. So I just wanted to be very clear about that, that the guidelines to help screen the hot tub and put it in a location that does nestle it into their property. That's why it's lowered down onto the ground instead of sitting directly up onto the deck, so that when the homeowners are in it, they are tucked away. So I just wanted to bring all of that up, and I'm happy to answer any other questions as well.
Okay. So the way I want to review something like this, especially when it's in a cluster, is if every single person in this cluster put in a hot tub like this, would it impact the neighbors? And to me, I feel like it is put out quite far from the back of the deck. And I'm not saying it couldn't, be in the back area. To me, it visually, you can't just look at it from the ground. If you look at it from above as well, I mean, it only really impacts from one neighbor to the left, or I guess to the right if you're looking at the front. But I just picture if every single person there put a hot tub along the back row of that houses, or all of the houses, how does it visually impact the cluster? Because you screened it from it's screened from the one side toward the neighboring cluster property, but it's not screened toward the lake, which I'm sure the point of it there is to view the lake. So
there's actually a riparian buffer right behind the back of their house and where the lake is. So this hot tub can't actually even be seen from the bulkhead where that photo is being. You can actually see the riparian buffer that goes down to the lake. There's a vegetative patch that goes down to the boats over there, but directly from the lake, this is not, if you're looking back off their property, is not viewable until you get into where the boats are actually parked.
Okay.
And to your point, Michael, I think it would be very that it would be whether we were having this conversation in our neighborhood, everything is everywhere. So we have homeowners that put fire pits out in their backyard that are extended out into the property, and everyone can see them from down, from their upper decks. So it's no different to me of a hot tub space versus a fire pit versus a patio versus anything that you're going to put in the built environment out there. And I should mention that these photos were also taken in the middle of construction. So the deck has now been painted. It's almost the same color as the hot tub itself, which was matching everything. So it is blended in quite nicely. And the skip laurels have been growing in for 6 months. So they're even getting more dense. But I will stop monopolizing the floor. I apologize.
So can we see the actual standard up on the screen? I'm not pulling it up on my computer fast enough for my taste. Is that possible, staff? Could we pull up the?
Yes, if you give me a minute, I should be able to get it up.
Thank you.
As he's pulling that up, I will say you will not be wowed by what the design guideline says, because actually it just has one review level, which is staff, and what elements or what modifications can happen under that staff review level. So just
that's fine. I just want to, we seem to be going down two different paths. I personally feel like with the planting and the color and the painting that it is an approvable project, and I just want to, I don't think it's detrimental to the community.
Yeah, because remember, this is an appeal, so we need to
I know. That's why I
need
want to see
to-
the
we
standard.
need to look at the appeal and figure out,
Mhm.
so
My personal opinion is that it meets the standard. Because it is integrated visually and physically in the surrounding structure. And it is set on a deck or patio.
yeah.
In fact, I think it's pretty sensitive that they didn't put it on the deck and they sunk it down so it has less impact.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing about this lot is they're right on a cluster path down to the dock. And so I did visit this weekend and walk down the path, and I was very surprised. It is super close to the path. And a lot of questions I have about the landscape. I think that it's possibly, I appreciate the efforts that have been done to screen it. It's still quite obtrusive. I mean, you can still see it very clearly through the landscaping. So I think that maybe the screening or the minimize the impact maybe just hasn't been carried out the way that the application looks like. Maybe there's some missing elements that aren't there yet, possibly. And I know that Emily made the point that they're going to grow in and contribute to like the densifying around it. But it's just unfortunate that because of where it's located and because of the location of the path. Now, when I went, maybe I was just more focused on this house. I did not look across the way at the neighbors. I don't know if they're further away from the path than this house is. And I think that's what's contributing to my kind of concern with it. And I just think the screening kind of just needs to be bumped up. I don't have a problem with this location. It's a townhouse cluster, so they've got narrow lots. I just think that maybe a little bit needs to be added to visually screen it from the path and from the dock. I do believe it's visible from the dock, unfortunately.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, but looking at the guideline, they're showing a hot tub and the outside corner of the patio. And what you're saying is that for this specific lot, it's not okay, but maybe in another, that's the way I'm hearing it. And then what I'm hearing Mike Wood say is that, well, we wouldn't want everybody to do this. So I don't think that it violates the standard.
Well,
So, and I did not hear new information. So if there's new information, I'd be glad to discuss that.
Correct. And I guess I would say, staff, if you go to slide 13, just so I'm clear on kind of everything. I don't know why I can't see the slides anymore. There we go. Can you go to slide 13, please? So if you, the picture above that one, staff. So based on the landscaping plan, it looks like there's supposed to be, because this is probably, Brian, where you saw the hot tub pretty clear as day, right? It looks like from the landscaping plan, there's still some landscaping that was approved in the approval to go in that location. And this picture may be old. Emily, could you speak on that? Has that landscaping gone in yet that was in the approved plan?
That landscaping, the additional skip laurels and the screening that would actually go along the base of the deck, if we look at the plan, has actually not been installed yet. That screening is more for the homeowners because there is an angle where people walking down the path do get a view of the interior of the hot tub. It has not been installed. It's scheduled to be installed before the end of the month.
Yeah, because that would be the only thing, Brian, that I think, because to me, the approval has not fully been executed. And so with that additional screening, if you go to the landscaping plan, staff, which is on slide
18,
there's still more to be done, basically. And so I feel like the approval is mitigating the guideline that I feel like was misapplied because I didn't look at this plan close enough. But there is more planting because I was just looking at the pictures. And so there is more screening planned, which then integrates it better into the environment and kind of screens it like what we're looking for. Because at the end of the day, I think I'm looking for more screening, and that ultimately is coming. It's just not installed yet, and it was part of the approved plan. So to me, there's no the guideline was not misapplied from that standpoint, and that's kind of where I was thinking. But if if you're still on that path, you let me know.
No, I think
But
you guys have hit it exactly. That especially when you're coming down the path, this would help tremendously. That these and Emily, maybe you could help me. I don't know what we're looking at in terms of like their height and kind of fullness, because I think that would help tremendously because you do get that oblique view, from underneath the deck to right where they're going to be in their hot tub. So those, maybe there's two groups of three. Are those going to be tall? Like what are those?
So those are three more of the skip laurels, which are the three that are screening at the moment, are eventually going to grow to be 9 to 12 feet tall and almost that same width. So it will eventually be a solid green wall with a small break in it for a pathway. They're just growing in, so it will be completely screened in all due time. And then there are some additional ornamental grasses, but that's really just for softness and adding a little bit of texture.
And so they just haven't been installed yet. They're still part of the plan. They just haven't been installed.
Correct. Just the three that are right up against the longer existing deck, towards the left side of the property, closer to the pipe stem.
in the plants toward the lake, those are the ferns and the grasses, and those are going to get, based on the thing, they're going to get, the grass grows to about 3 to 4 feet in height, 3 to 4 foot in width. So about the same height as the tub, essentially.
Correct.
And those are the three in front of it that are toward the bulkhead.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, it is, based on the approved plan, which has not been implemented fully, to me, it does not misapply the guideline. And I don't see any new information that would say otherwise. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments, motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the appeal based on the fact that it is not a misapplied guide. There are no misapplied guidelines and there's no new information.
Okay. So there's a motion. Do I hear a second? I'll second that. So Sarah, Mike, and I'm assuming Emily, you're abstaining.
Correct.
Are not voting.
Correct.
So I need to hear votes from John, Elena, Samantha, and Brian, and myself. So I'm gonna just go do roll call because it'll make it easier. Elena, do you vote in the affirmative or the negative?
Affirmative.
John?
Affirmative.
Samantha?
Affirmative.
Brian?
Affirmative.
Was that negative or affirmative?
Affirmative, sorry.
Affirmative. And then I also vote in affirmative. So the motion is denied for the appeal. Thank you, sir. All right. Moving on to application G, 2206 Southgate Square. Is the appellant here?
Yes, asking the homeowner to unmute.
Quítale el unmute.
Yes, you're unmuted.
So as the appellant, sir, we need to prove that there is new information or a misapplied guideline to our ruling. I know this has been going on for quite some time. So if you could walk us through your appeal, please.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Gabriel, and I'm just gonna translate it for Mr. Armando, the owner of the 2206 Southgate Square. And he got a couple of things to talk about. He's kind of, to be honest with you guys, sounds like a little bit unhappy with what's going on over here. It's about his new deck from the house that he built. I saw myself a company working in a building, and I truly believe that the deck it's absolute fine. And to make sure, he says, I'm just a little friend. He says he walk around the neighbor, and he really see a lot of he sees a lot of things that they're not quite how can I say they don't look that good as his house. Nice, clean, better than a lot of other house around. And he went to check 2254 245. I'm sorry, 2425 2234. And all these properties has the same ¿cómo se llama la madera?
Tracks.
Same material, the track, the new material that Home Depot sell for the building decks. And he's also a before keep going with the plan, he talks to the president of Southgate, which is Mr. ¿Cómo se llama?
Tahir Ahmed.
Tahir Ahmed. I'm sure you guys know him. And he says the plan is good. After he finished the construction. He walked the construction. He says he says that it's a safety. It's been built with a Virginia a contractor approved with the material. And it does looks a lot so better than a lot of other houses around here. And we have it over here, the email, I think, that he received from an inspector that I'm sorry, but I can't pronounce his name, but I'm sure he's Asian. I'm gonna spell him real quick. It's HYUKKIKWON. That's the name of the inspector who comes walking around, and he says that our deck it looks good, it's safety, it's clean, it's being made in according to the parameters of the construction that needs to be done in the place. And he's kind of concerned about these letters that have been received, that somebody it says that he needs to change this deck, like get rid of it and making another one. And that's the reason why he's here with you guys, try to discuss this kind of problem that he got. Plus behind the house, he got a big tree. In one of the branch of the tree is hitting the roofing, and more than one, I'm a witness of that. He got an emergency water leaking into the house, and he has to spend a lot of money on fix that, and it's still not finished with it. And so now he got this problem, this issue. He spent a lot of $1,000 of money, I'm sorry, on do this project, and it's done, and now he's have to get rid of it, and he's not willing to do it. I mean, he's trying to, how can I say, finding a way with you guys to not get rid of it, the construction that he did.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask staff a question, because you guys wrote a statement. Can somebody speak on the statement that was written, and then also the of the employee of Reston Association that the card is kind of listed as the reason for the appeal?
Sure. So we, as a part of our process, have when a decision is made, we return to the property to ensure that the decision is followed and adhered to. I was not part of the conversation. I don't know what the conversation was with the homeowner from our inspector. Um, Speaking frankly, there are lots of opportunities for staff to comment on something, regardless of whether it meets um, the design guideline or the approval that was received, especially when we understand circumstances of a certain member may be in a position to not necessarily meet the requirements of either the design guideline, the cluster standards, or the approval that was received. But I wanted to make sure that the DRB is aware this actually started a little over a year ago in terms of there was a red patio on the property that, because of the cluster standard, which required a permeable space in between the edge of the property and the actual patio, the DRB could not approve the patio. So instead, the homeowner replaced or put on top of, I can't decide which one, the existing gray Trex material to address the resale violation that he inherited when he purchased the property. The cluster has been non-communicative with staff in terms of updating the cluster standard to allow certain modifications. So currently, the way that this is written, if it is considered a patio by the DRB, then it doesn't meet the patio setback requirements in the cluster standard. If it's a deck, and we're calling it a ground level deck, then the actual Trex material that was used is not in the cluster standard. We have sent several communications to the cluster to update the cluster standard. If the cluster president, Mr. Zahir Ahmed, quote unquote, approves of the Trex material that has been used, a simple cluster standard application updating the standard should address and abate those items. We believe strongly that the DRB has consistently tried to have some flexibility in reviewing the applications from this cluster, but the cluster does need to act and the cluster does need to update the standard. They are responsible for their standards, and so they need to submit an application.
Okay. Because I think I was on the panel. I believe Brian was on the panel and John. And the reason why we kept denying this application was because it didn't meet the cluster standard. And so we're not allowed to kind of vote on it, but what is, and I know is frowned upon, but it sounds like RA maybe is maybe backing us a little bit, is us going against a cluster guideline when there is a set cluster guideline. I think aesthetically the deck works with the color of the house, and to me it is a deck and it does set back the 2 feet from the fence, where I think they must have pulled up the patio that originally went to the fence. What's tricky is if the cluster doesn't act, we can't do anything. And so I think my question is, could this be an instance where we approve something, or that we make an approval based on that it's only good with the current homeowner unless the guidelines are updated? Is that
most certainly can confer with council, but Reston Association has taken the position that the DRB needs to approve something that complies with the cluster standard. I will also note staff has drafted and has an application ready for the cluster to sign. So you will continue to be in this situation if the cluster doesn't respond to our desire to get the homeowner closer to compliance and conformance to an established cluster standard. It will continue to be an issue if the DRB continues to.
It wasn't that many years ago that guy was here, that the president was here updating the standards. So is he just gone ghost? I'm very confused.
I can't answer that.
Okay. Well, I guess, but my question, my thing is that if we, let's say hypothetically, we appeal it and then we approve it, You guys are going to then appeal it.
Unless the RA board of directors requests me not to, yes. That's always a possibility, just throwing that out there. That is a possibility.
And counsel, Tony, are you on here?
I am.
In the appeal, there's some financial language that is stating that they may or may not be able to afford to currently replace it. Would that allow this board to amend or when we have a denial, give a certain length of time extension for said denial?
Doubtful.
Does it
Because
have to be
once you
90
deny
days?
the application or the appeal, the judgment is final, which is the disallowing it, and then it becomes an issue for eventually legal committee towards enforcement. Now, certainly when this comes up, a member of the DRB, the chair, for instance, could attend a legal committee and wish to be and asked to be heard. But that's about as far as I can get you.
And so that's where it would go if it denies. It goes to legal, and then they could, we could argue that we're asking for an extended timeline of removal, or unless a guideline is updated in the meantime. Basically, I could come to financial, or I could come to legal committee and argue that.
Argue is a strong word. We're all on the
Well,
same team, but you could certainly offer your opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, me, John, and Brian can't do anything on the appeal. So let someone else talk for a little bit, and then we'll go from there. I'm gonna let Emily start.
I had a spidey sense you were going to ask me. So I guess my inclination is the same here, where I feel like the decking, the ground level decking, is at least aesthetically integrated into the front of the home, though it does not meet cluster standards. And since we've had no communication from the cluster, I mean, honestly, my biggest problem with this is that the sunken walkway area seems more like a tripping hazard than anything else, but that's beyond the point of this application. I don't. Yeah, I'm also torn. Anybody else?
Samantha?
My thinking is very much the same as what Emily said. They really don't have a problem with the decking, and it just not meet the cluster standard.
Well, remember, we're looking at just clarifying. We are looking at an appeal, so we need to make sure that we've been presented new information, or we've been presented, a misapplied guideline, which, whether, technically, yes, they're in a cluster, but if you technically look at our patios and walkways guideline, if you go to slide 29, staff, just kind of for discussion, like, this is in a fully enclosed front yard, which is fully allowed by our guidelines. And so if this wasn't a fully enclosed yard, I could, see that, the guideline were correct, right, with a disapproval. But to me, when a cluster doesn't address, and I think what Cam was leading us a little bit, and I could be wrong, they only address patios. If we consider this as a ground level deck, then there is no cluster guideline. So then we're allowed to use our guidelines. If you understand the hint I'm putting down. So to me, we have, you have a little bit of leeway there. Once again, I was on the original panel, so I can't do anything. But Elena, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I don't know how this popped into my head, but this is a deck. It's not a patio. So their patio guideline does not apply. I think there's a case to be made for that. And I think because it is fully enclosed and because, well, let me just say, because it is not a patio, but a deck, I think that the deck guidelines for attached cluster properties or this patios and walkways should be applied.
Well, we do have a cluster decks and ground level, which states the exact same thing. For attached properties, if a deck is below 18 inches and is set 2 feet in from a property line, it says is located in a front yard that is substantially enclosed with a privacy fence and the entire deck is behind the fence. You know, that is an approvable.
Yeah.
So, Steph, I don't know if you have that specific guideline. This is the patio and walkway guideline, but if you go to our front yard deck, or not our front yard, but decks ground level less than 18 inches above grade guideline for clusters. That's where I think Elena is leading us to, that this is a deck and not a patio. Cam is raising his hand.
Yes, I am. Great ideas and concepts. But the problem then becomes it's not cluster standard. The Trex material is gray and the only Trex material approved in this cluster is brown.
But is that for rear decks?
It's for elevated decks.
Where's the cluster standard for decks? Do we have that in front of us?
I don't think that it's a part of the application, but also it's not fully enclosed.
I think that's a subjective argument that we could maybe. Where is it not enclosed? I mean, it has a
at the entrance to it.
So you can actually see it from the street.
Well, I mean, if a gate is left open, you can see it from the street too. I mean,
there is no gate. If you
no, I understand. What I'm saying is, like, you could argue that on a fully enclosed, project as well. If they leave the gate open all the time, it's open. I'm just, to me, I will be quiet. But
so let me just preface this with, if there was an opportunity to not have this be before you all, staff would have done that. And so if you look at the cluster standard, Trex, it just says decks. It doesn't specify between elevated, ground level or anything. It just says decks. And Trex Select Saddle, Trex Transcend Vintage Lantern, Olympic Solid Stain Russet, same color as house trim, left to weather naturally. Unfortunately, the homeowner would have to change their entire house color palette in order to get same color as trim.
What were the Trex colors again? You said, Cam? Vintage and
Vintage Lantern, Saddle Select, and then the stain was Olympic Russet.
Or left to weather, right?
Or left to weather, correct.
So if we could, okay, so one thought is, when I look at the pictures, could we get a close-up of the deck color, please? It simulates left to weather.
I don't even know what color that is, to be perfectly honest.
I believe it's Trex Island Mist, if I'm thinking it out of a lineup.
And the cluster standard says for patios, all front yard patios require pervious buffers of at least 2 feet between the paved surface and adjacent properties. Exceptions can be made on a case-by-case basis, depending on an owner's ability to demonstrate front yard patio does not negatively impact water drainage patterns. So because Trex has gaps in it, the fact that there isn't a 2-foot buffer does not negatively impact water drainage patterns. One could argue. I would argue adamantly that a really dark color in this situation is not the right thing to do to visually integrate it. And since it mimics left weather naturally, it doesn't violate the cluster standard for the color palette.
So if I may, are we then at a place already where we feel as though there's a guideline misapplied and that we'd want to hear accept the appeal? Is that kind of where the room is going here?
I'll make that motion. That it's a misapplied guideline.
All right, so can you guys can you restate what your motion is, please?
Okay, my motion is to hear the appeal de novo based on a misapplied guideline. Because the DRB needs to consider front yard decks as opposed to patios and compliance with both how do I say this? And whether or not this unique situation is in compliance with the intent of the cluster's standards.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second. I can't vote, but I'm asking for clarification just so I have it clear. So because the decision, let me look at the decision just to make sure that we're here in the right, because it kept basically, this one kept getting deferred. Kept getting deferred, and then finally last meeting we just decided to deny it because the applicant wasn't there. And so let me just read what it says. So the color apparently is coastal gray according to this.
Yeah.
In front location is indicated disapproved existing ground level deck. So even we're calling it a deck in front location as indicated on submitted site plan and photos as not in conformance with the cluster standards for patios, which states that the front yard patios require pervious buffers of at least 2 feet between the paved surface and adjacent properties, and that the patio must be made of concrete and or flagstone. The design review board requires that the ground level deck be removed within 90 days. Okay. So you're stating that the guideline for ground level decks was not applied correctly, and
that's it.
Okay. All right. And you seconded from Emily, right, Emily? You were the one who seconded it? All right. So that's some clarification. Brian, John, and myself cannot vote on this. So I'm going to I'll do a roll call vote. Elena, do you vote in the affirmative or negative?
Affirmative.
Emily?
Affirmative.
Samantha?
Affirmative.
John? Or sorry, not John. Sorry, Sarah.
Affirmative.
And Mike B.
Mike B's against.
Okay. So we have, and then 3 abstentions. So motion to accept the appeal is granted 4-1-3. So since we have accepted the appeal, we will hear the application de novo. So is the applicant still on, Mr. Ventura, and I think his translator?
Yes, I'm asking him to unmute now.
I just have one question for them that I want to. Now, John, and Brian, we can now partake in this review.
Thank you.
Applicant here still, or did they drop?
Yes, they're still here.
All right.
You're muted.
Can you hear me, sir? Are you there, sir?
Yes.
So when you guys removed the old tile that you guys inherited when you bought the house, did all of that impervious area get removed besides the sidewalk? That's the concrete? Is it all dirt like we see on the side there?
Solo la parte que cortamos, ¿verdad? we didn't, he said we didn't remove anything. We just build this, what you consider a deck on
Tiene 2 pies de concreto
Oh,
para abajo.
on top on that, and it does have a 2 feet thick of concrete. We figured that out, he says. So we have some inspector come over. Of course, maybe you guys don't have noticed who's the inspector, but he concrete inspector to figure it, or to give us allow us to do this a little deck on top on that, because it's 2 feet deep of concrete. So it does support a way of, we put it on top, he says. And but we didn't remove anything. I mean, I saw myself the house because I'm kind of familiar with these guys, and it looks terrible. It looks disgusting. So if he says, I'm translating for him. He said we did something and we come out with this, and because I have a bunch of the approved by the president of the area, whatever, we continue with the project. Otherwise, I won't, I don't know, for some reason at some point it's the communication was cut in he keep going with the project because Reston Association have different inspectors, I guess, or presidents.
Presidente.
Or presidents in
Pero
some sort of areas.
Esto es Southgate.
For example, over here in Southgate, there is the gentleman come over and says that it was 100% good. It was perfect. It was nice. So we didn't do anything else by, like finish that construction that I was doing, he says. Yeah. And because of that thing on my side, I continue to do the thing, and so at this point he says I'm kind of disappointed because if Reston Association, I'm not supposed to communicate with anybody else by the president of this area, the Southgate, and he gave me the proof, okay, to continue with the project. Well, I don't know who I'm gonna be deal with, even though if you guys considering that some rules are not, correctly followed or whatever. But first of all, I see other houses. I don't really go by that, he says, but I have the proof of the president of the area, so he's the one who talks. Now somebody above of him come over and send a letter, says you got 3 months to get rid of it. This thing and this project is not good, and you should follow some sort of a different rules, and it's got to be built with some kind of different material, with concrete or whatever. And so he said, I'm kind of lost. I'm kind of disappointed. I'm kind of like Reston Association lie in my face, and I don't know what to do at this point. I don't know anybody else who can ask him of my project if I'm doing okay or not. Plus, I had a concrete inspector. Plus, I have this Asian guy as an inspector check the area and give me that okay of.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The whole thing.
Okay, hold on. So Emily, you raised your hand.
I did, because staff, if we could go to slide 26, that's showing the old concrete. I wanted to ask the applicant, it sounds like you didn't remove any of the concrete because it was too thick, but there does appear to be a brick border that was around the perimeter of the property. Was that brick border removed? Because now it's a planting bed and there's bushes growing in it. So I very much doubt that brick is still there. We're hoping for the case of impervious for creating a buffer for drainage, that brick has been removed. Is it still there, or is it just the concrete that's remaining?
Like the red tile or brick, whatever it was. It seems like you removed part of it along where that gutter is.
And Steph, I'd also like to point out that their gutter is extended, their downspout goes all the way along their fence line, which is pretty typical in these lots, which means that there's rainfall that's going to be in that area, but nothing from their roof is percolating into that space.
Let's not talk too much about the gutter because that alone is not approvable in our guidelines. But
it's not making it worse.
Right. I guess my thought process with asking the question, I was trying to hope that we were improving the area with the ground level pervious deck, and that, you know, all of the impervious area has been removed for this deck. One thing, I would be okay with a ground level deck. I do think we maybe we need to discuss the material used. You know, staff is pretty clear that, you know, this color is not in the guidelines for an approvable color. I think Elena was trying to argue potentially it's like wood when it weathers. I think that might be a stretch, but I know budget is a concern. Now that it's de novo, we can always say that it needs to be replaced with an approved cluster deck material and give a extended deadline for said approval. Just as an idea to say, hey, if you know, from a budgetary standpoint, regular green wood, you know, would be pressure treated wood would be a, you know, relatively low budget option. I know it still costs money, but it would allow the substructure to remain and the boards themselves could be replaced.
Or
just an idea.
sorry to interrupt, but or the cluster could come back if we give an extended period, and he could lobby the cluster to come back to add that color.
Exactly.
I do think that the gray goes better with the blue
Don't get me
and
wrong,
white.
I agree. I don't think the brown would go at all. I think the fence doesn't fit the house color at all. But that's the guideline, unfortunately. And so in this case, you know, left to weather would probably be the better option for the wood, from an aesthetic standpoint. So that's where I'm leaning. And then, you know, encourage the cluster to, you know, I know staff has tried. I know staff has done everything they can. So I'm not, you know, dissuading that they didn't, but I think we eventually, I know in the past, you know, we've made approvals of cluster stuff that when clusters are silent on things. And to me, they don't have a front yard deck guideline. They have a deck guideline, which we're trying to interpret for a front yard in this instance. And so if we motion to approve the front yard deck, but require the material to be switched out for a pressure treated left to weather with an extended timeline of, I don't know what that timeline would be. I don't know what I'm allowed to do. It would give the homeowner flexibility to keep trying to lobby the cluster, and potentially give him time financially that if he can't get the cluster on board, that then he can just replace it with a less expensive material that is approvable under the guidelines, is where I'm kind of going with it.
Mike, you can give as long as the DRB agrees to provide the homeowner, but from what I heard from the homeowner, the cluster president is telling their membership not to communicate with Reston Association. So I'm not necessarily sure how we go about doing that other than continuing to engage with the cluster president to update the standard, because that would be
they got to engage with us every time someone sells a house. I mean, it's and so I don't, you know, so we can give, you know, our typical time frame. A project needs to be completed within once it's approved, it's 18 months, correct?
That is correct.
And so if we approve it with the condition that the material is changed to be pressure treated,
or the cluster standard
is updated with the Trex alternate material that he, if we view this as if it was a new project right before us, it's existing obviously, but and that's where that language with existing versus new, to me, this is a new proposed deck that we're approving, and that's how we should review it, not an existing. But anyways,
But question, even if he chose to stain it one of the cluster approved colors, even if we didn't think it was matched the house, it's still a cluster approved color. So wouldn't that
true?
So I'm just thinking maybe he doesn't have to replace anything. I mean, he could potentially just use one of the cluster approved colors. And
you're really not supposed to stain Trex. It doesn't
you can't stain Trex.
Yeah, or even paint it. Like you could do deck over if but it won't last. It doesn't adhere. Sorry.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if he didn't like the left the weather and the wood was down and then he wanted to stain it, or he wanted to replace it with another color, I think the issue is right now the deck itself is not approved.
Can we just say as our motion that we want the material to be replaced with something approved by the cluster?
By the cluster deck standard. I think
by the cluster deck standards, because then he could say, I want to do the Trex in brown, or I want to do this wood and stain it. Like if we say you have to do this or that, then if he decides to do anything else that's approved by the cluster, it's kind of hemming him into one location.
Yeah.
They could add.
Well, and then also then if they add the Trex color down the line, it covers that because now it's added and it's an approved cluster deck surface material. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion. All right. I'll make a motion to approve the deck, the front yard ground level deck, with the note that the cluster does not have a direct guideline for front yard decks, but this is a relatively fully enclosed front yard, and that we require that the deck material, however, align with the deck cluster standard, and it needs to be an approved deck surface material per the guidelines. And that's my motion.
Since I seem to be
there a time?
Oh yeah, time frame, Michael.
I was just was there a time frame for?
Well, I thought if it's an approved project, you have 18 months, and so to me that's plenty of time. So I think if we give the approval, it's getting rid of any sort of time restriction except our normal 18-month.
For the applicant to complete the project, as you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. The project is not complete yet. It's it still has 18 months to complete it per our decision.
Is there, and if I may, is there a problem there considering this is the before us as a result of a complaint, a violation, et cetera?
Well, it's from a POA, but if he then has an approved, he has an approved DRB application, he then has a new timeline of 18 months to complete it. I mean, I can clarify in my motion that this will follow the standard DRB approval of 18 months, and the applicant can request an extension if it comes down to that in the future, just like any other applicant, any other member is allowed to do.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just looking for clarification.
So did somebody second it? Elena, did you second it?
I seconded it since I see
a little further discussion. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right. Motion passes 8-0.
Yeah, I was going to say, please count me amongst the ayes.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard you say yay. All right. Motion passes. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to application H. 11576 Greenwich Point Road. Is this an appeal? Hold on. Let me look at my agenda. Is this an appeal? No.
No, it's not an appeal. This is return after deferral.
Yeah, okay.
And if the applicant is here, could you please raise your hand? I don't see Colin here. Colin, if you're here or anybody representing Colin, could you please raise your hand? Did you want to defer this to the end of the agenda to see if we could give the applicant more time to be present? Because no one raised their hand in the chat.
So the only reason why I want to ask a question, because this is only here because there was a complaint, correct?
Correct. This was a result of a complaint.
And so I know this came before us before. Did we defer it because the homeowner wasn't present last time as well? Because I feel like
I think so. I think that's what the letter says.
No,
No,
this was deferred for a look-see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
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 And then the homeowner did submit photos of what they depicted that depict the correct lighting that they believe. He did send me an email that he would be present, but we can review it without him being present.
Is the affected party still wishing to be a part of the application?
Yes.
Okay. And is the affected party here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so the reason why I'm bringing this up. So guys, what do you guys think? Because to me, making the affected party wait around, I would rather, I mean, I guess we could motion to move it to the end of the agenda, but I also don't want to motion to move to the agenda if we're then just going to defer it because the applicant's not here. Does anyone have a gut feel on it? I mean, we're talking about, approximately 70 lights on a residential property. So, I mean, I know they're low voltage lighting, but there are 70 of them. So it's a little,
I mean, are you thinking defer action on it, just defer action tonight and move it to another meeting?
well, I don't know. I mean, staff, do you guys have the contact information? Do you have the ability to, I know they said they were wanting to be on the meeting.
Yeah, I can give them a call if you wanted to defer to the end of the agenda. I can give them a call to see.
What I'd prefer to do is not move it to the end, but just move it just one spot back, and then if we don't hear from them, we can then decide what we want to do on it. That way, it just gives them a little bit more time. We don't keep the affected party too much longer, because I just want to be respectful of their time as well. So I'll make a motion to move application H just one spot back behind application I, while staff tries to contact them to be present. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, motion passes. All right, we'll come back to that. Thank you for being patient, affected party. All right. Application I. We have 2058 Lake Audubon Court. We have a deck. And it is a cluster. Okay. Is the applicant here, or it looks like Convene Architecture's raising their hand? Maybe they're the app.
Yes, both the applicant and representatives are here and unmuted.
Hi, should I get started? I'm Laura Campbell with Convene Architecture.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and present what you guys are doing, it looks like you guys have a deck modification or a new deck, and we'll hear from you, and then we'll hear from any affected parties, and then we'll come back and ask any questions.
Great. So our firm has been working with Maggie and David on their addition and updated deck. In August, our sunroom and mudroom addition proposals were approved by the DRB, but a decision on the deck size and rail design was deferred. And so that's what you all are considering tonight. The proposal in front of you shows a reduced deck size from the proposal in August. The proposed deck extends from the footprint of the existing house towards the water 14 feet 8 inches, which precisely matches the deck that is there currently and was approved by the DRB in 2016. The decking we have specified is Trex Whidbey, which is a close match to the Trex gravel path in the cluster standard, and that's been discontinued. The Trex circular stair we have specified is black and complies with cluster standards for circular stairs. And in fact, when we selected this stair, black was the only color that complied with cluster standards. The Trex rail structure we have specified is also black. We selected this cable rail infill system because it is low maintenance, eco-friendly, unobtrusive, and matches the circular stair color approved by the cluster standard. And that's really the 4 kind of things that you all are looking at as far as we understand things. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Staff, I think there's an affected party. Could we hear from them? Just as a reminder, affected parties, you have 3 minutes to speak, stating your status, or if you're representing a cluster, you would have 5 minutes. So, staff, do we have who the affected party is? I think we got a statement from the president of Shores Cluster. Staff? I think LaShonda might be on the phone with that other applicant.
I've asked them to unmute.
Okay, great. Is Deborah here?
I'm not.
Oh no, I'm not seeing them.
I see DPD. I'm going to ask them to unmute.
Thank you. Yes. DPD is, I am Debbie Driscoll, the president of the Shores Cluster Board. Our only concern is the railing structure. The board has begun to discuss an alternate railing, but currently our cluster standards are the 2x2 picket, the traditional picket approach. So we have this, it will be on our agenda for the November meeting, but we have not considered alternate railing systems yet. We will, but we have not done so far to this point.
Okay. And those, if they're using a Trex material, the railing though has been required to still all be wood by your
it was more of the color that was the issue, the look. We had begun discussing whether the Trex material and the composites tend to be a smaller picket. We had begun discussing that to consider it, but we had not finished our discussion. So currently it is this wood 2x2 style.
But as an example, if you were to do the Trex spiral stairs as an example, that is a black railing that's currently approved.
The spiral stairs for black is approved. Yes.
Okay. All right. Just curious. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue, Michael, is that they're going for cable on the deck railing.
No, correct. I know. Sorry, I didn't catch your name from Convene.
I'm Laura.
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 What are the verticals? What are the posts? Are they going to be wood for the cable, or is it going to be a black metal?
It's black metal
To match this Trex stair.
Oh,
Presumably.
sorry. Ask your question again. I might have misunderstood you.
All right, for the posts of the guardrail. What are the posts?
They're black square posts.
They are black.
To match the stair. Yeah.
That's what I think. Okay. All right. And then the railing or the cable itself is stainless steel.
Correct.
Okay. Let me go around the room, see if anyone's had any questions for you, and then
Michael?
Yep.
Reston Association is an affected party.
Well, you guys are on everything, so I don't know whether to ask you or not. So go for it. What do you got?
So it's Cam Adams on behalf of Resident Association Board of Directors. If we could go back to the deferral letter, that gives the DRB a clear position on the fact that the homeowner was requested to work with the cluster to update the cluster standards to either be broadened to allow what they are proposing or not. And I don't believe the cluster has updated their cluster standards to reflect specifically the deck railing that is being proposed. And so the current proposal does not meet the requirements of the established DRB approved cluster standard.
So if I could ask staff and Cam and Michael the same question, it seems like if we just say that it's approved with a cluster standard approved railing on the deck, and they've got 18 months to complete, then they can wait for the next cluster meeting. If the cable rail doesn't get approved as a cluster standard, they've got to do the wood pickets. If it does, then they do it as they originally intended. Is that a reasonable tact, staff?
It's not unreasonable. We would make sure that the decision affirms the requirement to come into conformance with this DRB approved cluster standard.
Yeah.
So yes, it's possible.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling. I'm trying to figure out if I see a picture of what the black Trex spiral stair looks like with the railing. And so the wood railing then needs to be painted to match whatever board material you do, right? Is the standard. It's not explicitly clear from what I'm reading.
And I will just say the spiral stair also comes with a cable rail. So you can get it with, I mean, I guess that's really more of an issue for the cluster, but it can be these pickets or it can be cable.
That seems kind of scary to me.
Is this an Audubon cluster or Lake Audubon cluster? It's Audubon, right?
Lake Audubon.
Shores.
Lake Audubon. Sure.
Shores at Lake Audubon.
And our deferral also mentioned lighting. Were you guys proposing lighting in this project?
I believe the cluster indicated in writing that they were willing to update the standard to allow the proposed fixtures. So I think that was taken care of. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's our understanding as well.
Okay. But for railings, all they said was that they're going to put it on the next board meeting. Essentially, they weren't going to, say one way or the other whether that was an approvable means.
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. All right. John, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Elena?
No, but I still can't find their flip book because the way they reorganized the site. So, but no, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Samantha, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Sarah?
No questions.
Mike B?
Negative, sir. Thank you.
Brian?
No questions.
Emily?
No questions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any questions. I just have comments wise. I mean, I think I like what Elena was putting down just because if we approve a railing that's not in a cluster guideline, it's gonna get appealed by RA. So, and I think it's an approvable project as is. I like that we've scaled it back to the existing deck dimension that was there before. I think they've done great strides to come with some concessions to, hear, kind of our initial concerns with the original deck and how far it was protruding out. And so I applaud them for that. And it's much appreciated. And so personally, I think the aesthetic of the railing would look great with this cluster. A lot of the lakeside clusters have had this approved or put in their cluster guidelines. Thinking of like, why am I drawing a blank of the one on Lake Anne? Starts with an M. What's their name? Anyways,
Moorings.
what is it?
Moorings.
Moorings cluster. There it is. I know they added it recently. And so just little things. So I think it definitely is an approvable railing if the cluster was looking for a 2 cents opinion on it. But I think right now, because it's not in the guideline, we can't approve it. Does anyone have any other further thoughts on that or want to make a motion?
I agree that it's an approvable rail, and if the cluster is interested in hearing what the DRB would say if they were to update their standard. And is there any other discussion? Because I guess I'm on a roll with motions, and I'll make a motion. If there's no more discussion. Make a motion to approve it with the stipulation that the deck railing must conform to DRB approved cluster guidelines. And
that's perfect, I think.
Just the normal caveats about the time to complete.
Okay. There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion on that? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions?
Mike B abstains.
I figured. Motion passes 7-0-1. Thank you.
Thanks. It's listed under the Shores with a T. I had looked at every other alpha, letter.
The Shores. The
Shores.
The only Shores. All right. LaShonda, were you able to get a hold of applicant H?
Yes.
Did they indicate that they'd be joining us?
Colin is present, and he is unmuted.
Okay. So, totally my fault. I had this in my calendar for tomorrow. It's my mistake. And I actually have some resources that were ready for tomorrow. So, they're not on the call right now. And so I'm going to, I think I'm going to, ask if it's okay. I'm going to ask for a, continuance or, come up on the next meeting if that's possible. This is the third. We've had our this project continued twice, and now just because more information was required. But now it's totally on me, and I'm going to ask if I can have it continued to the next meeting.
Okay. With one question that I have for you before
Sure.
I let you go. These photometric, and this is who I'm assuming was the resources that you are talking about, which we're thinking the meeting was tomorrow, from Daylum.
Yeah, Daylum. Yeah.
Yeah. So they provided you these diagrams. This is the new information that you brought, correct?
No, this has all been submitted before. What I did, Michael, the additional information that was required, the last meeting, the reason it was continued was, to tonight, which I thought was tomorrow night. Daylum did all of that. There were two things. The people that were on the committee, I think it was a smaller committee than that's here tonight, just like and they wanted to come out and see the property at night.
I gotcha. Okay.
And I'm assuming that's been done. That was the purpose.
Because see, last time I saw this, it didn't have any of that information. So I don't know if this came to our panel and then we deferred it and then it went to another panel maybe.
That's correct, Michael. It came to a smaller panel based on the photometrics. And then when we got it, I wanted to defer until we had a look-see available with the since seeing the photometrics, there was still a lot of back and forth. So I requested to defer it till we could do a look-see and get full DRB.
Gotcha.
Emily,
Okay.
did you have a chance to do that? Did you come out and see the property?
Yes, and staff did as well. So I believe staff that some of these updated photos are from the look-see, yes?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, because I didn't understand you guys were saying there was a look-see. I was like, I didn't know I needed to go look at anything. So I'm fine with the deferral because I would like to go look at this. I do live, relatively nearby. I live up Bennington Woods, so I can just walk down
Okay, that'd be great.
and come take a look.
Some of the pictures, like that picture right there, Michael, and for the group on the call, what I did was I walked around the lake and I submitted photos with addresses of other homes on the lake that had, similar lighting plans, if you will. And some of them Daylum did. So it's my understanding that they didn't have any complaints or any affected party submissions, but they do exist, and that's one of them right there. You're
Okay.
looking at.
Okay, cool.
So
All
you
right.
can walk around the lake and you can see it for yourself.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. So the applicant is requesting to defer to allow him to get his full team here
Yep.
to make his case. Does anyone want to accept that or make a motion? Do we want to hear from the affected party that's here just to let them be heard? Did you guys hear from the affected party, Emily, last time?
We did, yes.
Okay. If the affected party's here, I wouldn't mind hearing from them just so we can get it on record. So that way they don't have to necessarily come next time. And now the full board has heard them. So is Nancy here?
Nancy is here and I'm asking her to unmute.
So Nancy, just as an affected party, I'd like to hear from you. You've heard what the applicant has said about requesting a deferral. Obviously, it's an existing installation, so I'm sure you time is of an essence from your point of view. But if you could state your affected party status, you have 3 minutes to do so. Feel free to speak whenever.
Okay. One, I would say you refer to this as existing, but it was never approved. So I don't know whether that counts as new. I can't speak to other properties on the lake. I cannot see the property that Mr. Egan provided photos of, but he challenged any photos that I submitted as potentially not reflecting the reality. So we're at a stalemate in terms of photos. And I guess I would just wonder whether the other properties, I know I'm not allowed to know that, but whether, I don't know the address of the other property he's referring to, but whether they actually had an application that was approved for the lighting. So that property may be in the same circumstances, Mr. Egan. So, and I will say, I also appreciate the efforts that have been made to tone down the lighting and turn off at reasonable, what I would consider reasonable times. So appreciate that, but I would still like to be present if for whenever it's addressed the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. You can be. I wanted to make sure that we did not hear from you tonight, just because I know you were patient and stayed on. So I just wanted to make sure we heard from you, so that way the whole board could hear your concerns. The staff, just to that point, before we make a motion, for some of the extra addresses that the applicant provided, are we able to verify those addresses and any sort of low voltage lighting applications have been submitted? If they're what's tough is, I think if it's under, what is it, under five fixtures? Staff, 6 fixtures, is that for front yard and also 6 in the rear yard, right? Or 6 total for the property?
I believe it's 6 total for the property.
That they don't.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say they don't need an application, correct? If they're under that amount.
That is correct, but I don't believe that the homeowner provided actual addresses. He simply provided pictures of houses on the lake.
Oh, I thought I saw them labeled with numbers.
No, I had them. They were all it was in PowerPoint, and every slide was marked.
Yeah, I'm looking at 1486 Waterfront Road.
So you would like staff to investigate each one?
No, just he has 1486 as an example a bunch of times. And so I'm just trying to see if there's precedent in the neighborhood. 1486 is listed a lot of the time, so I think you really just need to look into one.
There was at least 4 of them, and I didn't even take pictures of if it had 6 or that. I did something that I thought was, commensurate with what we did.
Yeah. And what's tricky is some of the pictures, some of those are just window lights, coming through. Like it looks like the lake house as an example. Like I don't even know if they have any uplighting. I think that's just all lighting coming from outside of the windows. But anyways, staff, if you could just look at the 1486 Waterfront Road,
Sure,
just as an
absolutely.
example. That would just be the one that I'd be curious. Okay, so there's a request for a deferral. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to defer this application until the next available full DRB meeting.
Okay. I'll second that. Or
Oh, there you
John,
go.
Mike,
Either way.
do it, I think, whatever. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 8-0. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Application J. We have 2090 Golf Course Drive, right? Yes. No.
Yes, and the applicant is being asked to be unmuted.
Resolve the complaint.
Hello.
Hello. And so we deferred some stuff, and I'm assuming you're back.
Yes, so you guys wanted some more information. I provided some more information and wanted to provide some further information. In looking at some information that Ms. Evers submitted recently, I want to note that the downspout is actually 3 inches short of the common property sidewalk. I did not get a chance to submit the pictures to this by Friday. Sorry, I've been out of town, in and out. And that actually the downspouts, my downspout is actually not unique. So just in a short walk around the neighborhood across from my court and down on my row, there are downspouts that come out straight to the sidewalk. So mine is not actually against cluster property or against what's something that's unique to the cluster. This is actually seen in many homes in the water. And her comment that the gutter water drains directly onto the community sidewalk is false because it is 3 inches short. I was not able, and I had the previous president of the cluster look on Reston Association. We could not find any standards regarding drain pipes. Also, Ms. Evers states that she says that her drainage system that goes out to the parking lot, which is community, property, is safer when actually the way it drains out. Unfortunately, I have the pictures, but unless you allow me to screen share, you can't see them. There are additional pictures to this. Actually creates actually a safety risk for her coming out of her car or anyone else, because her house is above mine and my neighbor Kirk's, who's here with me this evening. So it actually does create a safety issue, because if the water were to come out that way and freeze, it creates safety issues for us and her. And so that's a problem. But as you can see from my pictures, I have lots of plants. They're still in the process of growing, as you can appreciate. That plants usually take a few years to fully develop. And unless you're really looking for it, you don't really see the drain pipe, and it is cut short, as I said earlier, 3 inches short. And Kirk and I, what I want to do with reestablishing the framing around the garden. Would be a project with Kirk, my neighbor, on the other side of my house and we would be using the same materials. And I would replace the wooden planks with stone to make it look a lot nicer, which would be the same that he's having done as well. And further down, and he's going to be replacing his red pavers, as you can see on the one picture there, with the stone as well. And the on the other side of the garden, which is what I also want to do, there's some other pictures that you guys have, is similar to what my other neighbor on the other side of Miss Evers has done and was approved by Reston Association, which is to fix some drainage issues because there's some drainage problems. So that way it looks a lot nicer and it's not, not so swampy with a rock bed and graded a little bit better and, going flush with the pavement. And Kirk is my neighbor here who's with me, and he's on the other side of me, and he and I are trying to do a joint project. So that way there is consistency, with the front looks of our gardens.
Staff, can you go to picture 11 real quick? Just slide one down. This is a mock-up, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. It looked very real, so it threw me off. So I just want to make this is a mock-up. So this is
no.
This is so this is what you were intending. This is what you're proposing.
It's just replacing, and it's not going to be taller or bigger than what I currently have. It's just replacing materials, the wooden planks.
Replacing the wooden timbers with
yes, because they're very dated and worn looking. It doesn't look nice, I'll be honest.
Okay.
And that way Kirk and I then have a consistent look across.
And then just another question for picture 2. Staff, if you go slide back up, sorry. Keep going up. Next slide up. One that's labeled picture 2. Where is that?
So picture 2, that's Mark. He's on the other side of Martha's. So Martha is between Mark and I, and that was approved a year or year and a half by the DRB. And so I'm going to take the same concept and do from picture 1, I want to replace that muck, which is very messy, with picture 2, that concept.
Okay.
Yep.
I would just suggest, I was looking because I thought it looked quite nice, and I felt like that was kind of
no, it looks a lot nicer than what I have.
We were
okay,
thinking
great.
about. So I was confused because it was presented, but it wasn't explained fully what.
Okay, I apologize.
Or whose it was. Okay. That was just clarification real quick. I think that there's an affected party, staff. Let's hear from them, and then we'll come back to you. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Affected parties, just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes to state your affected party status.
Yeah.
And staff is keeping that time.
Yeah, Martha Evers, I'm at 2092. Yeah, this goes all the way back to when I moved in 21, we had drainage and erosion solutions out there. It's been difficult dealing with the neighbor, would not deal with any type of professional assistance. My biggest concern is who's doing the project. The other problem is she's got an elaborate project plan, but it's on my property. I've got the professional survey. She submitted the survey and it's on my property. She's got it 3 inches. This is a townhouse. It's 3 inches from my brickwork, my stonework. She's showing the timber edging all the way to my property. She's very aggressively taken over that entire area as her property and submitted documents. The professional surveys show that my property goes all the way to the end of that brick. The drain is there. I have documentation, a certified letter from Reston Association dated April 27th of 2023. There's no violations with my drainage or my landscaping. She keeps submitting the same complaint over and over. That was resolved over a year ago. But just aggressively taking over that entire area, the project, the 2 things that were shut by Drainage and Erosion Solutions, they said to move the trash cans out of there where we've got the HVAC and the three sided wooden enclosure, move that over there and focus just having the drainage and erosion project done there. But she's got that going all the way. She has this hand-drawn sketch 3 inches from my brick sidewalk. I mean, over 22 inches of that property is mine. Her project is on my property. So that's a huge problem. We've got 2 professional surveys showing that. The front drainage I had submitted under the ADA due to my age and disability. Even VDOT in Fairfax County, they prefer the drainage to go into the sewer drain. The running water is not stagnant. It doesn't freeze. Due to gravity and the laws of physics, this runs down the street like all the rest of the rain coming down. Every time it rains, that entire street's full and it goes into the sewer drain. So when you're dumping it, that was part of the applicant didn't show up sessions 1 or 2. 3, you had proposed to her that she have a pop-up there. There's photographs of the drain head. It goes right out onto, now that's where if you want to talk about pooling, freezing, algae, slipping, is when it's dumping on the community sidewalk. And if you look at the plan for the stonework, she's got a hole in that dumping right out onto the community sidewalk. Now that's my drain. I also submitted, that runs literally down the drain, the huge storm drains right in front of our house. And
Pardon me, Ms. Everett?
Water.
That is time. Thank you.
Can I ask one question? So just if you go to slide 5, Steph, I just want to clarify with the affected party. Why? So the property line is at the edge of your guys' corner of your house. At what point is she coming on your property? I'm very confused at why you think that.
Right here, 3 inches from my brick sidewalk.
No. That's from the property line. Your steps are in whatever 18 inches or whatever they are. She's not proposing to come on your property with this proposal.
Yeah, but she got right on here. Her plan is 3 inches from my thing. It should be 22 inches.
No, it's 3 inches from the property line. It's from the corner. The property line, according to the plat, is in line with the corner of the front of your house. And that's what she's showing here.
Right. It's brick, but the brick and the approved drain are part. She's encroaching on that. She's constantly digging by my drain. She plants on that whole side. That's my property.
But okay, but if you look at, I don't know how. I'm looking where's the slide? If you go to slide 44, Steph. So her proposal, her property line is from the front corner of your house, extension past her house forward. That's what she's proposing to improve. What she's doing now, you have your gutter and your clean out and everything that's in between your brick and this property line. But she's proposing her improvement is staying within her property line by 3 inches. So I'm just clarifying, just so you know, that's what she is proposing right now. I don't know, in the past, maybe it was different, but I just want to make sure that you're clear. She's not proposing to come on your property to do her improvement.
Hand-drawn thing. I mean, who is doing this work? There's no professionals that she ever gets to do work. She's proposing stonework on my property too. I've already got stonework, and what she submitted, there's no copy from her sidewalk over to mine. It's just this. Everything is so secretive for the affected party. There's been no communication. It's within, right on my.
I mean,
already been.
Once again, she's showing that stone to stop at the corner of the property line. We can't require them to have, if she wants to draw a 2D, she can do. I mean, I'm understanding what she's doing, so I'm just trying to clarify to you to make sure that she's not proposing anything on her property, and I want to make sure that, or on your property.
Well,
so I just want to make sure that that's clear. Okay. Did you guys mute her, or maybe she got muted on accident? But I just want to make it sure that it's clear that they're from my understanding, and maybe someone else on this board can speak to it as well. to me, the drawing, even though it is, hand drawn, it's, it's a homeowner property. To me, they're allowed to do a hand drawing. Would I love it to be clearer? Sure. But to me, it's clear that it's stopping at the property line.
For what it's worth, I agree with your assessment. It's not on the neighbor's property.
I'm not saying everything is correct about the application. I think we'll talk about some other things, but I just, for the record, I want to make sure that's clear. It is on her property. John, do you have any questions for the applicant? John, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Elena, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Samantha?
No question, thank you.
Sarah?
No questions, thank you.
Mike?
I will. I'm figuring it out though, Michael. Come back to me if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll skip you. Brian?
No questions.
Emily?
Yeah, hi. I have one, and it's just there's appears to be a curb cut in front of the applicant's, I'm going to call it the right-hand side of their property where that downspout extends. That cuts through the curb underneath the sidewalk. Is there another older curb cut that I can't find a single photo of the left side front of this property, and if there's an old curb cut there and it's just being bypassed, or if it's not there, because that would change my opinion on a couple of things.
I don't think so. I can't say for certain. But there's also pictures later in it where you can see throughout the neighborhood, a lot of the curb cuts have actually been cemented over. And that's why people have downspouts on top of their garden and are covering it up with plants, which was one of RA's suggestions, is to cover it up with plants, which is what I did.
Okay. Yeah, I think my only other question is, because you've got a lot of plantings in here and you're kind of hoping to put some kind of stone wall around it, is there any reason why we couldn't back up the pipe and do some kind of rain garden infiltration basin? Because that would just involve cutting the pipe back and letting the water percolate into the garden, which would help the plants. Would there be an opposition to that? Because I am loath to drain water directly across a public sidewalk.
Well, it doesn't change. It's actually cut 3 inches short of the sidewalk. So it doesn't actually go onto the sidewalk any more than rain naturally falls onto the sidewalk. And some of the project that Kirk and I are looking to do together to replace the timbers with stone in front of the bushes on the left. There's going to be stone there.
Right, but you have stone, and then you have, as is shown on this drawing, a curb cut through.
Sorry, I apologize. Rocks.
Yes,
Just
yes,
like
yeah, because I mean, it is different than just having rainfall area, because it's concentrated runoff off of your roof. There's flow, there's speed, there's velocity. When it's being channelized like that, which is why we typically do recommend a pop-up. In Fairfax County, it's usually only recommended to put a pop-up 10 feet from your property line. I understand that these are townhouses and that's probably more impractical.
Yeah.
But my inclination is to have this either be done it let out in a dry creek that can slow down and dissipate the water, or let it absorb into the property. But other than that, I don't have any further questions, Michael.
Mike, did you come up with a question?
No, I was going to ask about the curb cuts, but I think Emily just got me there.
So. If not, I have one. So I think what's confusing, and I think it's more of a question for clarification, on this slide, there is a black circle in the stone wall. And so I think what I'm hearing the applicant saying is that that is not supposed to be there.
No.
Oh.
Okay. So that will not be there. So it's going to be a solid stone. So what we would I would recommend personally is I do like the idea of a dry, whether it's similar to like those stones that you showed in picture 2 as an example, or even if it was just a dry well is another term for underground that could collect some of the water and disperse it a little better. Because if that gutter downspout was going directly on the sidewalk, that would be against our guidelines. With that hole there, even if it was ending 3 inches back and then there was a hole, I would argue that water is still getting through kind of that wall. But if that was not there, the hole is not there, then I think it's an approvable with maybe, I would step back the downspout and try to have some sort of hard surface like a dry river creek or a dry well or a combination of both to collect the water and disperse it softly like Emily was stating. I think the rest of the application, I think is an improvement. I think what you're proposing for over on your property on the right-hand side, I think is a great solution. And it's kind of what we were looking for. And so, from that standpoint, I think the only part that I have any issues with is that downspout and whether you do a pop-up like Emily was saying, which is basically, we can't really do a pop-up because the spout is above grade. So there's really no way to do a pop-up. So I think you've done a great job at planting it and you've met our guidelines of concealing the pipe. I just think there's like just that final termination is the biggest issue that I see. And
sure. So my neighbor Kirk, who's is in the house with the blue, he and I are working together to do this. What he has similar, where we are going to replace it with the stone, and behind the stone would be like a little rock bed, so that way it would also feed into that and help and manage the water.
Yeah, so if I may, so if that rock bed, if you actually dug a little down further and put gravel in there, that will be a dry well, as Michael was saying. And it would slow it down even more because water's going to fall. Gravity's going to take it through the gravel and slow it down.
Okay.
And I won't specify what more is. I'd leave that to Emily.
Yeah, I think that advocating for a dry well is the right instance here to cover. The surface would be decorative river rock that would help slow down the surface runoff, but creating, for most downspouts of this size, we usually recommend like a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. So it's not a big area that you dig down and add gravel into, and that'll just let the water come out of the pipe and infiltrate a lot faster, and kind of be a little storage space in the time being. I would recommend, just for the longevity of the wall that you're going to be building, that you back it up off that wall by like at least 5 feet, because otherwise you're going to get hydrostatic pressure building up behind this wall if it's actually retaining anything. So just for the own longevity of your project, you want to prevent water from building up behind the new little dry stack edging that you're going to be doing here. So that would be my recommendation, is to just a dry well under with dry creek over top that is a recommended 5 feet from the property line and from your wall. But that's
and I think it's more of just an edging. I don't think it's a wall from my understanding. If you look at the timbers, they're not really retaining anything. And if this is a dry stack stone, water is going to percolate through it. It's not like it's mortared solid and it's like
ice and our freeze thaws do wreak havoc on things. But again, that's a recommendation, not a requirement.
Sure. My neighbor Kirk is here, who I'm doing the project with.
Yeah. Many years ago, I worked with a cluster because of this drainage problem coming down the sidewalk, because it comes down in torrents when it rains. And so what I worked with a cluster, and I put a river rock drainage area in front of the stone retainer that I have right now, which I am replacing along with Kim with this bluestone wall. So there's still going to be a river rock drainage area that drains down to a cluster installed drain that drains out back behind the houses. And so it's possible that we could connect that together, and then the river rock will drain everything from her property. Well, it drains the sidewalk anyhow. So it's just an extension of what we already have in place.
Which there's a picture of.
That's
With
picture
Are
9
those
and
pictures
10,
9 and
correct?
10?
Sorry, I need to see the pictures. Sorry, guys.
Scroll up, staff. I think it's these pictures 9 and 10 there. There's that.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that really takes a lot of the water and drains it into a drain at the end, because it's going downhill. Very, the slope is increasing. And so that's what I'm going to maintain when this new wall goes, or this bluestone wall goes in. So
you're thinking of replacing those red pavers or
yes,
red
that's
blocks
coming
with the
out.
stone. And so,
Right,
Kim,
we're going to keep
are
the
you
rocks
proposing
in.
also to do the rocks as well? Kind of
Yeah,
on
that's
the
what I'm
main
saying.
floor?
Is that's what I'm,
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
in front of the azaleas on 9, we're gonna do that so that way again it's a consistent look and it looks nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, unfortunately, it's due to, the drawing we're not quite understanding fully. So I think we'll
No,
just,
that's my fault.
but I don't want to make you, I applaud you for doing a lot of this yourself. I'm not trying to, make you, have to hire
it on
somebody
board.
to make a full plan. I think I understand, and I think we have enough pictures to make a motion. Does anyone want to make a motion on the application, and kind of with some clarification statements referencing some of their pictures?
I will go ahead and attempt to make that motion.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the application with the, as submitted, with the caveat that the existing downspout or extension on the left side of the property be terminated into a proposed dry well, and that the river rock border, as shown on photos 9 and 10 per the application, is continued from one property to the other as a border in front. I think that
Where the
that is
downspout is, yeah.
Yeah.
correct. I believe that that's the only notes that I needed to make. Does
And may I?
anyone have any additional comments?
Yeah, I would just make the suggestion that your motion include that the improvement to the right of her brick stairwell wall that is on her property match picture 2.
Correct. I would, yes, the improvements to the right side of the property would be similar to photo 2 per the application. Thank you for the amendment.
And that the improvement is to stay all on her
Yes.
property, which
Yes.
comes off of the front corner of the shared townhouses.
Yeah.
And I would make the suggestion that you add to your motion a definition of what you mean by dry well, like maybe a size.
Okay. So for the gravel dry well, I will recommend a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cubic volume of space at the terminus of the downspout. And that gravel is recommended to be something number 57 or higher, and that it be covered with decorative river rock, similar to photos 9 and 10.
So it's not gonna go further
All right.
into.
Did I
my
catch
flowers.
everything?
It's not gonna go further into my flowers because I do like my plants.
Yes. So
That'll
motion-
all be below grade, so you can plant all around it.
So there's a motion, there's there were some further suggestions that Emily since incorporated into her motion. I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Kim. All right. Pam, I believe you are up, sir. And I was noticing, man, you have so many initials after your name these days. You keep getting more important.
I don't know about more important, but definitely important.
I don't even know. I mean, the one that's PCAM, I mean, that has your own name in it. I don't even know what that means. What does that one mean?
It means that I am a professional community association manager.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
I didn't
So
even, I hadn't seen that one before. So, all right. So you got some single family detached fences for us.
Yes. So I'll preface this with the goal of this is really conversational and informational. I think over time, specifically as it relates to our single family detached homes, the DRB has kind of had and given some flexibility to homeowners when it comes to fences. Before I got here, maybe that flexibility wasn't always there, but it most certainly now, since the DRB has turned over, believe it or not, the only person that has served on the DRB since 2020 is Michael Wood.
OG.
So he's an OG. And what we're seeing is as we're coming into the now, I would say what we call second phase of home selling. So now we're closer to 60 years old. We're starting to get that next generation into Reston Association. And really, homeowners want more flexibility. They're now spending upwards of $1 million in single family homes in order to have more property, and they want to kind of enjoy their property. Most homes are actually undergoing, as Michael is quite well aware, of some redesigns in comparison to the original kind of Reston concept. And while we're getting that influx of new homes, we're getting that new design interest. Historically, privacy fences have only been allowed for two reasons, really. Having a pool, or the proximity to a main roadway, or a large acoustical sound. However, what we found is, and because Reston Association has now registered as an affected party on several applications, it seems to me that there is some inconsistency that we as staff need some direction from the DRB on. And similarly, we're hearing feedback from members that there's a concern that the DRB is not keeping the Reston standard, quote unquote standard. So if we could go to the next slide. Our goal here is guidance. We want to make sure that applications have a consistent review at any level, no matter who's reviewing it and from panel to panel. We also want to determine if there's a need for a design guideline rewrite, or if it's even desired at this point. We want to reduce processing times for applications that are consistent with the DRB guidance provided. This essentially means that depending on how an application comes before us and what the parameters are in terms of having a privacy fence, not having a privacy fence, having a different new style of fence is being introduced to a general area in Reston, staff has to make a judgment call in terms of either it's staff being reviewed, going to con, or going to panel based on the feedback and the information in the application and our own comparisons as to what has already been approved in the neighborhood. And single family homes really aren't neighborhoods, so to speak. The only one that may be even considered a neighborhood is Polo Fields. And then lastly, improve member satisfaction with the DRB application process. We don't want to put members in a position where, staff is saying no, and then all of a sudden DRB says yes. We also don't want to put it into a position that the DRB has said yes to one homeowner, but then said no to another homeowner. So if we could go to the next slide. Current design guideline. This is the imagery that's in the design guideline for single family detached homes. Picket or split rail style fences, 48 inches maximum in height is the standard for those types of fences. And then privacy fences can either be board on board, shadow box creations. And I don't necessarily always think that members, as Emily has pointed out, really can see and notice the difference. But as staff, we do, and we notice the difference between the different types of privacy fences that come through for applications. We see a lot of board on board. We see a lot of shadow box style fences. There's a lot of them out there. The interesting thing about the current design guidelines, if we could go to the next slide, is that the design guidelines, again, aren't prescriptive in what is and what is not allowed. It basically just says what's allowed at this review level. So there is a no application, a consultation, and a panel review level for fences in single-family homes. Again, it doesn't identify what is acceptable versus non-acceptable. It only establishes what's acceptable at those different review levels. The fence design guidelines should be consistent or compatible with other DRB approved fences in the neighborhood. That's a little subjective, especially if, several fences have been approved at con, several fences have been approved at panel, and they're all different. And then the DRB does have the flexibility to review situations on a case-by-case basis. And I purposely put this here because I want to make sure that the DRB knows that we are not trying to attempt to kind of usurp what the prerogative of the DRB is, but we do want to make sure that the DRB has all of the information when they're making the decisions. And so if staff can do something to inform the DRB in a better way, that's also a good point for us to be provided that information so that we can make sure that when we get these applications, we have a consistent process in which we are signing applications up and what that looks like. If we could go to the next slide. So I just wanted to go over a few of the types of things that we're talking about in this presentation as concern areas. So this was recently approved. And if you can tell, it's really a picket style fence with top boards on top of it. This is not the Reston standard. But it was approved, and I believe it was approved at a panel meeting. This was a new fence style that was introduced to this area, which now, if we look at the historical fact and the precedent that has been set, every homeowner that will submit an application in the future will use this as an example to have their opportunity to have the same similar fence. If we could go to the next slide. This may seem familiar to some of you. This was approved back in 2022, I believe, and we did a post-design review inspection. We actually got a complaint from a member on this fence. It's off of Lake Newport Road, and the fence style seemed to have been inconsistent with what the homeowner believed to be the fence style of the neighborhood, which is split rail fencing. Clearly, the DRB has the ability to approve fences and introduce new fence styles, but this also comes into play in terms of understanding at what review level should these decisions be being made. Is it at a panel level where there's 3 DRB members reviewing it? Is it consultation? Because again, the design guideline gives that flexibility there. And this was reviewed at a panel meeting because staff felt that it was a new design and that it needed to be reviewed at a panel meeting. And I believe we even met with the member and suggested that it may not get approved because it was an introduction to a new fence style that had not been approved before. I also want to make sure that the DRB is aware that when we get complaints, often the root of the complaint is that a member or a member's friend once upon a time submitted an application for this type of fence. It was denied. And now all of a sudden, several years later, it's now an approvable fence style. So that's also something to keep in mind as well. If we could go to the next slide. This is an example of something similar to maybe this afternoon or this evening in terms of making sure that the DRB is aware that while members get an opportunity, a free opportunity, to hear from design professionals. But often I believe that the DRB takes a position to help the member formulate an actual plan to get closer to a favorable outcome for their application. In those situations, staff does not believe that it's entirely the DRB's responsibility to do that, but it's your prerogative as a board to determine if that's something that you're interested in doing. This example, the homeowner wanted originally a 6-foot fence around the entire property that they have. There is no adjacent area that is next to a pathway or a roadway. There is no pool. It by all means did not meet the merit of a 6-foot privacy fence, with the exception of a electrical box or transformer box in the right-hand rear corner. The DRB made a determination that the purple areas could be 6-foot board-on-board fences, and then the green needed to be split rail. This is, again, one of those things that we try not to encourage the DRB to try to come to resolution for the homeowner, but allow the homeowner to come back and provide their desire for their project with the thought and feedback from the DRB. If we could go to the next slide. This is another example of a single family home with a desire to enclose their entire rear yard with a 6-foot privacy fence. As you can see in the picture in the plat, the dotted yellow line is and what was approved for a 6-foot privacy fence. I think it was board on board. I think it was board on board. It wasn't shadow box style. And that was due to the proximity of lot 15. The way that this house was set, the property actually faces, the rear property faces the side of the other property. It's kind of a weird position. That potentially could have made a valuable impact to the decision that was made. But the other part of this application is the orange lines that enclose the property. Those fences were actually approved in a 4-foot board-on-board style fencing, which introduces a new fence style into the neighborhood, which then becomes the precedent that members will see and say, well, this was approved at this house. And what we have tried to do is encourage the DRB to, if you're going to provide a variance, be very explicit as to why you're providing a variance for something. If there's some sort of consideration that needs to be made in terms of why the DRB approves something, that needs to be more memorialized in the decision, because otherwise, especially in panel and full board, those minutes are available to any member to request. And there is no rationale as to why it was approved, the way that it was approved. If we could go to the next slide. This is a more recent application. If you could see, the property was requested to have a 6-foot board-on-board privacy fence around the entire property. The left side of the property faces a pathway, but there was already natural vegetation that screened the pathway. The rear portion of the property does face a main roadway, but the right side of the property just faces another home. The panel that reviewed this application approved the application with no changes. So the entire property has a 6-foot board-on-board fence enclosing the rear yard. Again, DRB has the flexibility to make those determinations, but what appears to be kind of almost an inconsistent review of situation. New family moved in, they have little children, and they propose something that makes an overall improvement for their family. But if we go back to 2 slides before, the same concept was there, but the DRB didn't approve to enclose the entire rear yard. And there really is no differentiation between single-family homes. All single-family homes are really basically a part of the same neighborhood, quote-unquote neighborhood. So if we could go to the next slide. This is the last example that we have this evening, where the thought process here is that the left side of the property that faces the main roadway was already a 6-foot board-on-board fence. The homeowner wanted to make the entire outline that's red on the property, on the plat, a 6-foot board-on-board fence. There is a trail that is right behind their property. However, on the right side of the property, there was already a split rail fence that's the dotted black line. They wanted to make all of it a 6-foot board-on-board fence. but the DRB required that the purple line on the right-hand side, front facing, be split rail to match the neighbor's property line fence. And then the entire red line portion could remain or could be 6-foot board-on-board privacy fence. So in this particular situation, there was a little uniqueness that there was an existing fence on the right that was split rail. From a design aesthetic, maybe the DRB felt that this was more appropriate given how the property and the neighbor's property were set up already. But it does kind of speak to how does the DRB determine what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, and at what review level should those decisions be being made. So if we could go to the next slide. This is also another example of a different style fence that has been approved. So it's more of a horizontal style fence. This was approved in 2020. This particular property that you see on the screen actually has a pool in the backyard. So this was a new fence that was approved not too far from one of the previous 6-foot fences that we've seen on the screen this evening. And this was horizontal. It's a new fence style here in South Reston. The next slide, this homeowner actually used the previous slide to substantiate their application. You can see from the Fairfax County aerial shot, it does not meet any of the requirements that a 6-foot fence generally has in terms of being next to a roadway, being having a pool, or being next to a pathway or something that has a detrimental acoustical sound. But this was approved. And so we're slightly needing a little bit of direction in terms of, is this the new desire of the DRB that we should be reviewing these fences, that we should expand the design guideline and scope of what is appropriate for 6-foot fences? Is this now the new standard for fences in Reston? I think ultimately one of the things that is interesting for me, having seen a huge number of applications in the last couple of years, it does appear that single-family homeowners do want 6-foot board-on-board fences. And I think that that's something that the DRB has continued to kind of teeter on, depending on which panel it goes to, or if it goes to full board. So it might be time to have that kind of discussion in terms of what is it that we want to do as an association? Do we want to expand that a little bit more? Do we want to give single-family homeowners that flexibility that clearly they desire? Because it almost pins members, I don't want to say against one another, but it most certainly has this negative connotation when you speak to a longtime Restonian versus a newcomer, where this is just not the Reston way. And so how do we methodically attempt to change that narrative to say, hey, this is now something that we want to encourage, or we want to discuss and make sure that members are on board with as we start to look at the design guidelines and go through the process. And shout out to Mike B for coming to the RA Board of Directors meeting to present the first iteration of the design guidelines. It was not an easy feat.
It was a tough evening there, Kim.
It was a tough meeting, and honestly, rightfully so, because this is, members' largest asset is their homes, and so we want to make sure we're doing it right the first time. So if we could go to the next slide, I think it's the last one, maybe. Yep, it's the last one. So consideration for the next steps. We really just need guidance from you all in terms of what's the limit to the property line bordering the acoustical intrusion or roadway, what styles are appropriate and at what review level. There seems to be inconsistent styles on single streets. Is that a problem? I think one of the things that we typically see in homeowners associations is there's a desire to be kind of like this cookie cutter. Every single family home has the same exact fence style. I don't think that's the Reston concept. I don't think that's the Reston desire. I think members like the individuality of having that variation on their property in some aspects. So what is it that we're trying to achieve? And do we introduce new fence styles to a panel meeting, for example? Or do we then establish, hey, the panel has approved this as a fence style in your neighborhood. Staff can now review any application that's similar to this fence style since it's already been approved by a panel. Guidance on kind of height requirements. As many of you have seen, there's a lot of different height variations that we've seen as well. We've seen 4 feet, we've seen 5 feet, we've seen 6 feet, depending. And do you want us to request feedback from the membership? I think that might be a good opportunity for us to put something in RA News and say, hey, we want to hear from you. The DRB wants to hear from you. What would you like to see as a single family detached homeowner? And then do we decide to make a modification or a revision to the design guidelines? So I'll kind of like leave that open for you all to kind of decide what your thoughts are, if you want to come back to another meeting, if you have an opportunity to digest. But we really do look forward to any feedback that you all have, because we do need some direction as it relates to this, because we do want to make sure that member service, member satisfaction is our priority as staff, but most certainly navigating the DRB process and making it more simplistic for the members to be able to get through without any kind of agitation to the process and unsurety in terms of whether something is or is not acceptable.
Thank you, Kim. I have lots of thoughts, but I'm not going to be quiet until the end. Because I know a lot of those fences where there was unique modifications, I was involved with probably 80% of what you just presented, if not.
I was going to say I was a guilty culprit on one of them there, Mike.
And maybe it was because they were at full board. I don't remember. But anyways, let me go around and see if anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments. Open the floor. John, do you have any questions, comments?
Comments. There seems to have been, since I've been on the board, a big confusion between shadow box and board-on-board fencing. And there are two entirely different styles of fence. Shadow box involves vertical boards on either side of the horizontal supporting members. Board-on-board is boards that are on the same side of the supporting members and overlapping slightly, and this causes great confusion in the terminology used in the fences. So I would really stress, changing those qualifications to meet what is really intended.
And maybe we need like a more accurate drawing or something.
Oh, I would say a drawing to show exactly what we're talking about.
Okay. Elena?
Well, I take a kind of organic view of how neighborhoods should evolve, and I do think that we should talk about other materials and other looks of fences. And I also think it's kind of weird that if I put in a pool, I can have a privacy fence, but if I don't have a pool, I can't. When there's other reasons for a privacy fence. I think we need to rethink that. And I think that Cam's idea of putting it out in the newsletter might help mitigate, it won't fix, but it will help mitigate some of the complaints of, 2 years ago, I submitted for a privacy fence and I was denied. If we are public about reconsidering it, if we want to reconsider that.
Okay. Samantha?
Hi, I do need a little bit more time to digest, but a quick comments. I tend to agree with all the guideline of limiting the privacy fence to be installed. It just the nature in reston area and fence is kind of sort of a little bit disturbing to see. But I do need some time to think about it. Also, I was leaning toward more of in support request feedback from the membership. So that's my two quick thoughts on it.
Okay. Sarah?
So since I haven't been involved for very long, what was there something that Reston Association was trying to prevent from happening by limiting privacy fences? Was there a particular look or a feel that was there?
Yeah, I'll give a little background. I mean, open space. So a lot of Reston properties are back to wooded areas, heavily wooded areas, and people own part of those heavily wooded areas. And I think the thought process was, unless you were backing up to a road or some sort of pathway or something that maybe was more a visual or a noise acoustical intrusion, was when we would approve fences in that manner. Now, if you picture if all of our big single family lots, as an example, started putting up privacy fences around their entire perimeter of their property, we're going to start having wall feel, kind of like if you happen to walk through, I'm not going to drop any names, but if you drop, like, let's say Herndon, and you start walking on trails, it feels like you're walking next to walls and not in nature at all, right? As an example. So I think the thought process was, if we had split rail fence, it's lower, there's a lot less wood involved. It's, much more transparent feeling, weathers nicely to match kind of the open concept, which I think is great for wooded areas. I think we do have, obviously, privacy fence in the past have been where townhouse communities, right, where they're separating properties that are in close proximity, to provide that privacy that people want to be able to go and enjoy their backyard. And a lot of the times we only approve, a simple divider fence. It's not even a full, wrap around. That's what a lot of clusters have a standard on for the privacy fence. And the reason why privacy fence were approved on pools was because of a code requirement from a safety perspective. It can't be scaled by young children. And preventing accidental drownings kind of was it was a code requirement. So then I think RA adapted to allow those to be approvable.
But where is that in it's not in the guidelines. It's the only thing it says is about wire mesh being located on the inside or outside. There's nothing about pools in the fence guidelines. Like, I know that Fairfax County has a requirement. Yeah, it's not in here. And also, Fairfax County only requires that they be 48 inches, and they could be aluminum. They just have to be not climbable. So the idea that it has like 6-foot privacy in a swimming pool, they don't have anything to do with each other from a code perspective. And if you have an auto cover, you don't need a fence at all, according to building code. So there's no reason why you need a fence if you have a pool in the state of Virginia. So just throwing that fun little cannonball out there, but it's not my turn yet.
Well, then let's go tear them all down. So anyways, hopefully
I think it's
that helps.
odd that that's the reason you can have one.
Well, I think working from that understanding, and thank you, Michael. That was a great little lesson for me, at least. And to serve as like a guiding principle then on how to move forward and what to consider. And I don't know if I'd throw it out there that we would have like a work session about the fences and modifying the current standard. And I think that having this brought up, certainly I know that I could always use extra training on clarifications on the standards, and even like little brown bag sessions, or if we there's like recordings of, hey, going over some of these standards and what they look like. I, as a newer member to this, it would be helpful. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mike,
what are your thoughts on the height requirement, or the height being the dividing line between levels of approval or review? 6-footer has to come, if you want to go higher than 48 inches, it has to come before the full DRB, something like that. being
Yeah,
the
I
determining
think that's
factor
a,
for levels of review.
I think that's a good height. I think, we have approval, you don't even need an application if there's certain, obviously
Yeah.
there's some other things, but 48 inch is the maximum height. And so to me, if it's above that, I do think it's impactful on not just neighbors, but everybody kind of within view of it. And so I do think that's a good idea. I mean, Cam, what happens but isn't that kind of already what happens? Or are you just wanting us to memorialize that where, if someone comes in with a 6-foot fence, doesn't that automatically already kick in you guys to put it to a panel already?
No, not unless it doesn't meet the criteria for a 6-foot fence, which is basically near a roadway, or some acoustical intrusion that impacts the property. It could be reviewed at con, and they have been reviewed at con before.
Okay. Yeah, one thing I am thinking about with a pool, it wasn't just, sorry, and I may have misspoke because I'm remembering also, it's also to help with screening of pool equipment and kind of the acoustical noise from the pool itself out to neighbors as well. I think was also the thought process behind, the 6-foot fence, just from that standpoint. And I don't think we've required either that if you have a fence, you have to put up a 6-foot fence. Or sorry, if you have a pool, you have to put up a 6-foot fence. I think it's just people had proposed that kind of, and so it kind of became a norm when it's not in a standard, which honestly I didn't know until you pointed that out, Emily. So
Yeah, I mean,
does wonders.
but kind of putting a bow on it, Michael, I would agree that we probably do need to memorialize, was the term thrown out there. It kind of feels like we got to do something to help Cam and his folks along, at the very least. Give them some guideposts to kind of make their way through this process, so it's not willy-nilly, and so we don't have to have this same conversation and be treated to our greatest hits again, right?
I mean, to me, I do think that if it's over 4 feet, I think it should consider panel consideration. And the only reason why I bring
I'd
that
agree.
up is all of the examples. The only one I really don't have much knowledge on is the last 2521 Freetown Drive, which I think, I don't know the full backstory on that one, but all the other ones, it to me, there appeared to be, and we didn't have the decision letters, with them, but I know for 80% of them, there was certain reasons why we did what we did. It was a mixture between, there was, an applicant before us arguing for their right to have a 6-foot fence on certain what they were claiming to be acoustical or visual, things, or whether they have, I know one was complaining that they had a dog who could jump very high, and kept arguing and arguing and arguing. So there's certain obviously parameters, and I feel like, and Cam, I don't know if maybe when we do decision letters for fences specifically, we need to make sure that, I know sometimes on some of those we gave specific wording like due to XYZ, at least I thought we did, and maybe that never made it into the letter. I don't know when you go back and pull them up, but I do think the height, Mike, is a good. I think to me, anything over 48 that's differing from the norm in the neighborhood, it should automatically come to a panel. But that's just,
Yeah, I mean, I could support that in terms of
Because
at
to
the
me-
very least one guidepost.
And once again, I don't know much about it, but to me, 2521 Freetown Drive, personally, I don't think I would have approved that at a panel. Just because, to me, from what I see, it is in a wooded area, and it is, I would only approve that if there was a significant reason to why they were needing that. And like I said, there could have been a person arguing for an hour about their dog. I don't know, right? But I think Cam is wanting consistency, so. But I am open to changing of styles on a single street. I think that happens naturally over time, and I think it can be quite nice, kind of like what Elena was saying with the organic. Or what was the word you used, Elena? Organic kind of, evolution of certain things. So anyways, before I miss, Brian, did you have anything?
No, I mean nothing really to add. I think that the most effective thing that I've seen is when we give give the reasoning, like Cam said in the decision, to say that given the specifics of that site of why we allowed it, so that we can diffuse any neighborhood argument about, well, you improved my neighbors and why won't you improve mine, something like that. And I would say it would be helpful, I guess, when we see an application come up for a fence, when the neighbors, or excuse me, when the applicant gives photos of, well, this neighbor did this fence and this neighbor, would be helpful when we go into a panel decision or full board, that we know if those were approved or not. Because even if they might have the fence, but it may not have been approved. It'd be helpful to point that out to an applicant when they're trying to base it on a precedent that wasn't approved.
Yeah. Emily, did that let you go, Emily?
I've interrupted, so you didn't let me go. My only other thought was I agree with the 48-inch height, but I also agree that I mean, to me, so much of this depends on the neighborhood itself. I honestly think that the picket fences look bizarre in some of our neighborhoods because a picket fence and, kind of more mid-century modern construction just don't go together. So to me, it's almost more of, as Elena was mentioning, like neighborhood to neighborhood basis. And I do like the more horizontal board fencing. And honestly, that's getting like really popular and very high in demand. I could see a bunch of reasons why people might want a 6-foot fence. They don't, or a solid one. They don't want, even if they have a dog, they don't want people to be able to like stick their hand through it or feed them anything, or again, worrying about small kids or whatever. But I do think that that 4-foot cutoff is a good height. I think that it is a great idea to request feedback from the membership, because there might be things that we're not taking into consideration here. And I do think it would be nice to open it up to different styles. Like, I don't know why paddock fencing or aluminum or like wrought iron fencing was never considered, because those are more open and blending in. And for that matter, even like chain link, when I work with clients and they have really large properties and they want a fence to like keep an animal in, but they don't want to see it. Chain link is honestly what we recommend, because it disappears the second you get more than like 8 feet from it visually. So like those are just kind of my initial thoughts, that I think that looking at different styles to keep the open feeling, keep that kind of borrowed view shed, is a really good idea, and not just saying, hey, if you want a privacy fence, like this is the only way to do it. So yeah.
Okay. So my couple comments are, I think personally, I think staff, if it helps you, to me, anything under 48 inches or under, I feel like is something that could be reviewed by staff. And I know right now we have 2 approved fences that meet that, but I think there could be like that one with the top rail on the picket. To me, as long as it's a wood fence and it's under 4 feet, it meets. To me, it could go to staff. Whether, it's just hesitant, because I still think there needs to be, they always still need to have an application. I think there's certain instances where neighbors have to come to an agreement and need to sign things, because most fences go on shared property lines. And so, one thing that our guidelines have, and people don't, sometimes realize it, and they get in arguments with their neighbor, is if you just set your fence in 8 feet from your property line, which I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to give up that land, you can just build it. You don't need approval, assuming it meets, one of our standards. And so that would be my first thought, is 48 inches and under. Really, any wood fence style to me is approvable, because it's not going to have a huge visual impact. I think anything over 4 feet needs to come before a panel. I don't think it should go to a con. unless it's a part of a, a standard cluster. I guess if a cluster standard, it wouldn't matter. But there are some townhouses or clusters that don't have that privacy standard, and I think it should be something that is con approvable. I don't know, Cam. I mean, what else do you think our guideline needs to be updated? Because is that what you're pushing for?
No, actually, I would rather not go through updating a design guideline. I think what I was really looking for is just feedback from you all in terms of what it is that you believe to be an acceptable modification for members, because ultimately that is what dictates how staff responds to applications ultimately. So I did not think that I was going to hear from kind of the consensus, because I'm not hearing any opposition, that anything below 48 inches is pretty much, as long as it meets kind of these little nuances, should be staff reviewable. I didn't think I was going to hear that tonight. And so that's kind of the feedback that we're looking for, because ultimately that's going to make the process for the member much more simplistic than it is currently, because right now it currently, if we don't believe that the DRB is going to approve something, we don't put things that we can't approve on con. We put it on panel, and then panel 6 weeks from now, and then all of a sudden RA is an affected party, and it just becomes this thing that is quite honestly unnecessary from the conversation that we're having. And while I'm talking, I'd be curious. I know Trevor is on the call tonight. So Trevor, if you have anything to add, he's the board liaison for the DRB. Feel free.
I don't think I necessarily have anything to add from a board's perspective. I don't think this is something, I have my own personal thoughts, but really I'm supposed to be more of a board liaison. I know the board hasn't, at least in my opinion, hasn't thought about this extensively from a single family home perspective. So I can always bring that back and provide additional feedback at our next meeting and just get a consensus. But I thought the 48-inch comment I thought was reasonable and made sense. And anything, if we're looking at 6 foot and getting that additional approval, I think all of that makes sense. And if we can streamline it with staff to make it more efficient, again, seems commonsensical. Seems like it has a common sense approach to it, and seems like something that our membership would benefit from.
Thanks, Trevor.
No problem.
What was the comment with Mike B? What did he get? That was in reference to fences, or that was just in reference to general guideline updates?
I was the base, if you will, of the DRB when we presented a potential batch of updates to the standards, and it was a voyage that particular evening.
Gotcha.
So we presented 16 design guidelines for approval. Only 4 move forward. So
gotcha.
We still have a little bit of finagling to do, but I think we can get there. We'll get there.
Well, I guess the reason why I was asking is like you said, you don't want to update the design guideline at its moment, right? And so how would we incorporate potentially some adjustments for staff reviewable options that we feel, does it need to go through a design guideline update, or could we?
No, it's more of an administrative thing. I think that our team, LaShonda's team, is fantastic at being able to kind of adapt. And quite honestly, if you tell an advisor that there's a lower level of review for something, I think that they would be extremely happy with that. So it's more of an administrative thing for us to kind of orchestrate, but based on your feedback.
Yeah, so I think just a couple clarifications with my 48-inch comment. I think also if it's on a property line, it needs to have all signatures, from current, owners if they are going to be building it on the property line. If not, it then is going to kick it, beyond staff. Just because I don't want to have, us building fences by right on people's shared property lines if we don't have all the proper signatures, which I'm sure you guys still check. But I know even in some of those instances for when people were building along RA property, as an example, if it's right on RA property, if it's the shared property line, to me, RA, whether it's, our I don't know what department would sign off on it, but somebody to me needs to sign off on that, or they need to do the 8-foot step back per our guideline, unless they want to come before us and argue why they want it to be 2 feet or whatever it be. Because that, I think, will help preserve our open space feel. And if they want to put it closer, we can then dictate additional, green screening or, living fence or something in between the fence and the RA land as an example. So I would just caveat it with those kind of things. But if that's something we can do, I'd be, in full support of it.
Awesome. So our team will come, we may not come back, but we may share the information in terms of the outcome and next steps, but we're going to work together to create kind of, let's say, a standard operating procedure, for lack of a better way to best describe it, as to how we're going to move forward. And then, of course, it seemed like there was consensus to get feedback from the membership. So we're happy to do that as well, just as a deliverable to the DRB to kind of further consider if there is feedback that you all would like to respond to.
Okay.
Awesome. So last thing of business before you all motion to adjourn, LaShonda sent you all dates for December. If you could just make sure you respond back to LaShonda with those dates, and she has her hand raised, so I'm going to kick it over to her.
Yes, another announcement, if you can, just a reminder to check your emails for any signatures or requests that we sent out for meeting minutes. We have a couple outstanding. And then lastly, I have Julie on. I wanted to introduce our new design meeting administrator. Julie, she started, for those who have not met her already, she started with us late September. And so wanted to welcome her at a DRB meeting.
Oh, hello, I'm Julie. I also live in Reston. I live off of Lake Newport, so I'm some of your neighbors. But yeah, I'm the new DRB meeting admin, so it's nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Julie. Well, everybody respond to the party. I don't understand why that's hard to do. It's a party. It's, but I know I responded. So
You did.
I'm in the good graces of LaShonda. So anyways,
I'm usually not.
That way we can try to get that on the schedule sooner than later before everyone starts booking trips to the Maldives. So
well, I'll be in Kenya, so
see, John's already going over across the world. See, I knew somebody would be gone. So
it looks like the majority is I guess the 9th of December. So
yeah,
okay, cool. Okay, well, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, motion passes 8-0. Thanks, guys.
Awesome, thank you.
Who would vote against that?
I don't know, but I think I have to ask.
I think so too. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good day.
You guys.
good night.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
staff.